Hello! Welcome to the Fantasy Football Game Show presented by Front Yard Fantasy. My name is Josh, and I'm here today, as always, as the Fantasy Football Game Show always is, at 3 o'clock p.m. Eastern Time on weekdays. JL and Simon, they're at the FSGA conference this week in Detroit. Guys, I hope you're watching. If you're watching, I hope you're having a great time. However, we do have some awesome guests on the show today to mock draft with everyone here. Introducing first. Drafting out of the 101 spot today in today's mock drafts, we have the man, the myth, the legend, Rick Butts. He's the founder of Roto Heat. You can find him on Twitter at Roto Heat Rick. Rick, we were just talking about it, but you have to be you have to have some of the most guest appearances ever on the show, right?
It's getting up there. It's getting up there. Exactly. I feel blessed. You guys are great, and I love coming on every time.
You feeling good today? You think you're gonna draft a good team?
I don't know. To be completely honest, I've done 0 mock drafts and 4 regular drafts so far this year. So this will be my first one. So I may mess up.
All right, let's see what happens. Let's see what happens. But we also have another absolutely fantastic guest today. He's drafting out of the 10 spot, Andrew Hall. You can find him on Twitter at Andrew Hall FF, right under his face right there. He's an analyst at Fantasy Pros, co-host of the Dynasty Junkies podcast, and he's ready. He is ready to draft the best team today in the mock draft. Andrew, how are you doing today?
Oh, I'm doing great as well. And I'll be honest, I haven't really done a Dynasty startup in a while myself. So this will be good. It'll be like knocking some rust off. I've done a bunch of orphan takeovers this year. I haven't done a Dynasty startup in this whole offseason. So I did a couple of mock drafts here and there for Fantasy Pros, and I've written some things and have been involved in some things and all of that. But yeah, I haven't really done a full one either. So I'm excited for it though. I'm ready. I'm going to take you guys on. Let's do this.
That's what I like to hear.
That's why I like. It's also been a couple years for 1QB, right? Like all I do is super flex now. So 1QB is definitely throwing a wrench in there for me. I
kind of like 1QB though. I honestly like. It's like a throwback league. You know what I mean? It's like one of those like I remember this. How quaint. Like look at these quarterbacks. Like late round QB doesn't exist in Superflex, so it's a 1QB. Like JJ is a 1QB guy. I mean, there's a bunch of those things out there where it's just like there's a lot of 1QB content, but Superflex is definitely taking over, and I think is more fun in a sense. But I do like 1QB a lot. Let's just put it that way.
It just creates so much more value at every position. You can just create so many more fun trades. You guys know I love trading. So when it is a Superflex league, it can create more of that, which I obviously love. I think we still see one quarterback by far be the most popular format in redraft leagues. In Dynasty, I don't know. It's pretty close now, right, guys? I think Superflex is more or less taken over, right? I'm not joining a Dynasty one quarterback league anymore. I've got a couple. Don't get me wrong. I'm going to hang on to those. But I'm just super flex for now because I want the trades to happen. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah. Totally get it.
Absolutely.
So, today, we're doing a one quarterback dynasty mock draft. Like I said, it's going to be PPR. You're going to start one quarterback, 2 running backs, 3 wide receivers, 1 tight end, and 2 flex. We'll have 3 bench spots. Obviously, in a normal dynasty league, there would be a lot more bench spots, but we got to limit it to an hour today, guys. We got to limit it. And we have some awesome people in the chat. Craig, what's up, Craig? How you feeling today? I feel like today's show is going to be going to be a haul of a good one. Almost, Craig. I think you missed the B in there. I just hope no one expected Butts. Okay, that's pretty good. That's not bad. You combine.
So Andrew, my last name's Butts.
I picked up on that. Yeah.
Yeah. We have Twin saying, yo, how you doing, Twin? Good to see you. Jay, this crew is fire. I absolutely agree. Who are Simon and JL? Who are they? We don't need them. Let's get them out of here. JL and Simon are actually on a super secret mission. Tell me about it, Jay, because they haven't told me anything. They just kind of left. They said they were going to some conference, but JL is allowed to talk to us while he's at the super secret mission. So what's up, JL? How you doing? Kev saying bird up. We got Rick is the best. That's what I'm talking about. And they said, Rick, what happened with the Yankees Cubs this weekend?
A lot of runs and not very many of them on the Cubs side. That's what happened this weekend.
I think
we're in 2 different spots in our with our teams in baseball. We're in a rough rebuild right now.
It sounds like Jay is a Yankees fan, and it sounds like you might be a Cubs fan. Am I not mistaken?
Maybe a little bit.
Right.
Maybe a little bit.
Well, Andrew's the GOAT. Rick, you got the best, and Andrew's the GOAT. What's better, being the best or the GOAT?
The GOAT, greatest of all time.
Yeah. So Jay's saying something there. We have Mr. Scampers. Hello, Mr. Scampers. How you doing? And Jay, you can blame me. I scheduled it. There we go. That's what I'm talking about. Well, guys, without further ado, I mean, mock drafts, they typically take about an hour to get done. So let's just get in there. Let's start this draft. We have Roto Heat Rick, who's on the stream with us right here. He's going to have the first pick. I'm going to start the draft, guys. Let's go. And you are on the clock, Rick. And he takes Jamar Chase. He doesn't even think about it. He knew he was taken with the 101 spot. And Andrew, well, you can't be too upset. You weren't going to get in with the 10th pick. But is he also your 101, Andrew?
Oh, for sure. Yeah, it's in redraft, I probably lean Taylor, but in Dynasty, there's nobody but Chase. Like it's Chase Jefferson at 1-2. Totally agree with that. That's exactly how I have my rankings.
It is so funny because it was just a year ago that everybody was worried about Jamar Chase and how much it changed from this time last year to now. I told people last year, I started watching rookie wide receivers in 2015 when I first got into Dynasty, and he was my favorite wide receiver prospect. Since then, the dude's just a monster, and I think he's got room that he can even get better from last year. We saw it from Justin Jefferson the year before to last year. People thought he already peaked, but there's still some room for these guys.
Swampy, come on, Swamp, get in here. I mean, Swamp, I think, is going to get auto-drafted here, but is going to end up with the third pick.
Come on.
I would assume. Jonathan Taylor's. Yep, auto-draft Jonathan Taylor. Could be worse. I hope Swamp gets in here. He's a normal guy that drafts with us. I know he typically tries to draft and work at the same time, though. And he just joined. I'm sure you're not too upset about getting Jonathan Taylor, though. Swamp.
Oh, no.
But maybe Swamp was planning on going someone different, and it screwed over Mr. Scampers with the fourth pick. Yeah, you never know.
Yeah, I don't mind Kupp as a third receiver. I think that makes sense. And I mean, if I'm at 3, I'd probably take Kupp. But again, you're getting nitpicky there because that top tier is just those 2, like we said. So after that, it's kind of, up to you.
I think I just heard something here, Andrew. Did I hear this correctly? You would take Cooper Kupp over Jonathan Taylor? Is that what I heard?
In Dynasty, I probably would. Yeah, I think just with that re-sign, with Cooper Kupp getting re-signed, I think there is some more value there long term. And in Dynasty startups, I'm doing a lot of drafting for value as opposed to roster construction. I'm doing a lot of it with insulating that value and making sure that I'm not taking too many players that are going to decrease in value quickly. I like my Dynasty rosters to have a lot of value for long term. And we'll see this, I guess, when I finally get my chance to pick, maybe. And there's nothing wrong with Taylor and Harris. I don't mind them going in the first. I'm not anti-running back. It's just I tend to like players like Lamb even and some of these other receivers that I think are going to hold that value through the year a little longer. And they're not going to have the variation from year to year. In most cases, not every receiver is going to be like a Michael Thomas who goes from like first to nothing, Yeah. But running backs, you have a tendency to see that value drop a little bit faster. So.
No, I completely agree. I mean, Taylor would be my number 3 ranked person for Dynasty, a 1-quarterback Dynasty right now, but I completely understand your point. Cooper Kupp is up there in my wide receiver rankings. I would personally take CeeDee Lamb as my wide receiver 3. Cooper Kupp's my wide receiver 4 in Dynasty. So, we're more or less on the same page. After you get past Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, I do think there's a tier, right? You can agree there a little bit?
It's getting nitpicky. Right. Yeah. And that's kind of where it depends on how you want to do it. I mean, I'm assuming this is PPR, but that doesn't really come into play that much in my opinion. So it's like, at the top, you're fine. As long as you get somebody you like, that's all that matters,
Yeah. And PPR with Cooper Kupp, who scored 16 touchdowns last year. Cooper Kupp PPR standard. He's going to get a lot of catches. He's going to score a lot of touchdowns. He's going to get a lot of yards. It doesn't really matter, right? When it comes down to it. Andrew, you took Tyreek Hill.
I reached. So here's my thinking. I think Hill is still the man. I think Hill is one of those guys that, if not this year, definitely next year, we'll still see his first round value pay off. And I think he's one of the new offense and all this. He's got Waddle. He's got Tua. There's a bunch of controversy about him. But man, it's hard to pass on the cheetah. You know what I mean? Like, he's just going to be dominant. I'm not really worried about him losing a step. So again, if you're looking for insulation, that's what I'm looking for. So yeah, should be pretty easy.
Rick,
I love it.
You feel? Yeah,
I love it because everybody is so worried about him moving to Tua, but what they don't realize is that last year Tyreek Hill had his lowest ADOT in the past 5 or 6 years. It was only like 11 yards. They weren't just heaving the ball down the field to Tyreek Hill. Obviously, that's part of his game, but Tua excels in that range. He's very accurate. He was more accurate overall last year than Patrick Mahomes was.
Then real fast to that point, Rick, Tyreek Hill literally just came out and said, in terms of accuracy, I'll take Tua over Patrick Mahomes, which, but that goes to your
Patrick
point.
Mahomes is obviously better down the field. That's beside the point, but he is going to get just hit with a ton of targets. We saw Jalen Waddle thrive in that offense last year. Why do we not think Tyreek Hill can? Because as good as Waddle is, Tyreek Hill is better, in my opinion. But yeah, I mean, the NFL overall is closer to the line of scrimmage than it has been for a long time. A lot of the passes, the overall ADOT in the NFL has dropped, and it's more high percentage throws than it is, just heaving the ball down the field. It just doesn't happen as much as people think it does.
Yeah, no, I agree. And especially with Cheetah's speed, he can go run and catch a long ball, but he can catch a 5-yard pass and take it 80 yards. So I'm not really worried about the ADOT for someone like Tyreek Hill. You know what I mean? He's just too good. I'm not worried about that.
That was part of the article that I wrote was Patrick Mahomes actually had 4 of the top 20 guys in yards after catch last year. He wasn't just heaving the ball down the field. Let Tyreek Hill work an open field.
Yeah. No, I mean, that's I think Andrew made a good point when it comes. Oh, was it Kyle Pitts or Austin Eckler?
Yeah, I was going for Pitts. Now it's going to be my next pick. Okay, that's fine. Keep going.
Pitts, I think, is a fantastic value at the 202 in a 1-quarterback dynasty league. A fantastic value, in my opinion.
Yep.
I'm probably willing to take him, at the back end of the first, even ahead. So, like, real fast, we see Breece Hall go at the 107. That's a rookie running back. I love his talent, but it's a little early. That's somewhere I would be considering Kyle Pitts, honestly.
Yeah, and I was thinking about Pitts, but I think the 12-1 turn with it was auto was both running backs. I think that's probably where you see Pitts go is on that turn. Because most of the time, if I'm drafting at 12, I don't think that you're not going to get a stud tight end coming back. It's just too far. So I feel like that's where I feel confident is at that 12-1 turn. And again, because we don't have that, the first or second round were auto, they're both running backs. That kind of throws it off. But that's what drafts are, man. There is some chaos and randomness in drafts. Yep. Nothing is ever the same, So I like having a little bit of that in this.
And it looks like some people in the chat were right there with you. I mean, with everyone here, I was hoping Pitts found a way back to me. Jay said I almost went with Pitts at the 106. So like that's kind of just exactly what I was saying. I think he's going to be a first round pick, I think, in most 1-quarterback dynasty leagues when it comes down to it.
Yeah, I agree. And I was even thinking about taking Diggs instead of Hill. So I was glad to get Hill and Diggs as my first 2 picks. I think those are like, I can build a solid team around that. I'm not worried at all. Those are both studs. I'm good.
Yeah, I was getting ready to say Diggs there at 203 is awesome in my opinion.
And now your team is ready to win year 1 and you still have, I know you won 2 wide receivers early. This is a 3 wide receiver league. You still have a lot of flexibility going forward and you got 2 studs that are ready to produce immediately for your team. And they're, some people might call them old. What are they? They're both 28, I think, at this time.
I think so. Yep. But I'm not afraid of that with the receiver. I feel like it's not quite as much of a Hill that drops, using Hill as a punt, I guess. But like with Hill and Diggs, both are studs. I'm not really worried about them losing a lot of value. And I was going to mention that on the next time around is like, this is a 3 receiver, 2 flex setup. So you are, in my opinion, you are better off kind of really getting those stud receivers when you have to start at least 3 of them, because that's where you can differentiate yourself from everyone else. So I'm very happy with this start. I think this is, again, Pitts was my target, and I'm not shocked that he's gone, but it was like, 1 pick. I almost had it.
I'm right there with you. And you kind of made a point to this already. Oh yeah. I mean, wow. But what's the value going to look like next year? Are you able to trade these guys next year? And if Tyreek Hill and Stephon Diggs produce like we expect them to, yes, you're still going to be able to trade them when they're 28, 29 next year. In a couple of years, they're going to lose a lot of value, but that's what I'm looking for. So I'm completely fine with what you did here. And we saw, you're at the turn now, Rick, and you just picked DK Metcalf to pair with Jamar Chase and then J.K. Dobbins. Yes. Well, how do you feel about that, Rick?
Really, I'm looking at the running backs, and when I'm picking one in this spot, I want one that I feel like I've got at least 2 to 3 years with. Obviously Dalvin Cook, Derrick Henry, Kamara could all be better this year, but they could also drop off a cliff at any point. And with a top 36 pick, I really want to give myself the best opportunity to be set up for 2 to 3 years rather than, potentially lose that value in the next offseason.
Especially with the running back position when it comes down to it. I'm right there with you. When it comes down to the running backs, if you're taking them in the first 4 rounds, in my opinion, they better be you expect them to be producers for years to come, in my opinion. I'm not taking the Derrick Henrys of the world. I'm not even taking the Dalvin Cooks, who I expect to be a stud next season. Both of those guys. I don't want to be stuck holding the bag. when it comes down to it, right?
Well, and there's always that debate too. Like, when do you get out on a running back? And then when a startup dynasty draft happens, it's like, well, I don't want to get a running back that I already went out on. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, there's nothing worse than drafting a dynasty startup and then like already feeling like my receivers are old. I don't care about that. But running backs, I do care a little bit more. And I mean, Dobbins is not a bad pick at all. I've actually heard a lot of people talking about like him versus Chubb or him versus Kamara and all this. And I think with the way that his injury went and the way that he's most likely coming back, I think we've all pretty much assumed that he'll be back week 1. There is a chance that because he hasn't practiced, there is a chance that he's a little bit slow off the gate. That's for year 1. You know, this is a dynasty startup. I don't mind Dobbins at all. I think he's going to be on an offense that wants to run the ball a lot and is going to get a lot of touches and is going to get a lot of attention. I don't mind Dobbins at all as an RB1 on a team. Not a bad pick at all.
And as efficient as that running game is in Baltimore with Lamar Jackson at quarterback, you don't need the 18 to 22 touches from Dobbins that you would need from some of these other guys. Like, I love Cam Akers a lot. ETN, you probably need more touches from those guys to get the production that you're going to get from Dobbins. We saw Murray, Freeman, every running back that played last year was more efficient than they had been before, just from being in that Baltimore offense and that RPO and everything. So I love the efficiency, and I don't need the immense amount of touches out of Dobbins that I would need out of some of these other guys.
Yeah, that's a great point. Yep. And again, there's always that narrative of like they don't pass to the running backs, but the Ravens threw the ball the 9th most amount of times last year. Like, I mean, again, they had a bad defense. They were playing from behind. There's a whole bunch of narratives you can build into that, but they're not afraid to pass the ball. And I think sometimes that gets overlooked. So again, as someone who is coming off a pretty big injury, I still think Dobbins has at least 3 years left in him, and that's all you're looking for. You know what I mean? Like, it's almost impossible to guarantee anything longer than that at the running back position. So yeah.
J.K. Dobbins, let's go! I'm a big J.K. Dobbins fan. I'm with you guys. I think he really belongs here. Am I going to try to play the ADP game with him sometimes? Yeah, I just was in a dynasty startup and I waited and I ended up getting him. But he belongs right here. This is where his value should be, in my opinion. I love J.K. Dobbins. You know, very efficient when he played with the Ravens his rookie year. Sure, Gus Edwards is still going to get involved. Lamar Jackson is going to run a lot, but J.K. Dobbins is going to get plenty of opportunities to score touchdowns and have a lot of yards. You know, I love J.K. Dobbins. Absolutely love
Saw some interesting picks go. We got this 3 receiver team and Mr. Scampers. I mean, that's kind of an interesting build. I don't hate it. I'm just saying it's an interesting build.
No.
Puts me on the clock here. Man, I've got a debate. Ooh, I think I know who I'm going with. I'm doing it. I'm going to take the man, Nick Chubb. I'm kind of surprised he's still there at the 3rd. I feel like Nick Chubb has still got a lot of legs left. I think he's just one of the best pure runners I've seen. And so for me, I was thinking either him or Dobbins was kind of my target, if I'm being honest. And I was like, I'll take if either are there, I'll take, whichever one's left. But also, I mean, like, Chubb is a solid RB1. And I usually do, and we'll kind of see this as we go through, I usually do a hero RB kind of build anyway, where I just really have one running back that I kind of focus on early. And then I almost always let it ride because we've all seen how running back can be, RB2 especially can be buildable off the waivers or depth off benches and things like that, depending on your league. So, injuries are going to happen and all that. So I don't mind Chubb here. And depending on how spread Tutoria picks, I have my next pick lined up. I think I'm safe. I don't want to jinx it. Well, I got 25
I'm just
seconds
guessing. I bet I can guess the position. I'm not going to say anymore.
I bet you can guess the position. Yes. And I think I'm safe. We're going to see if this plays out.
We'll see. And just with your team build so far, Tyreek Hill, Stephon Diggs, guys that are going to produce immediately, you're going for it, man. You got Nick Chubb in there who's going to produce immediately for a team that we know wants to run the ball and is going to run the ball a lot. George Kittle, let's go. It's George Kittle. So you got your boy there with George Kittle. Yeah. I love George Kittle's talent, and that's kind of the end of a tier of tight ends.
Big time. Yep.
So
it used to have Waller in it. Yeah, it used to have Waller in it. There's some discussion about some other guys, but I'm agreeing with you 100%. Kittle's the end of that tier, and with the way that this draft has gone, with Kelsey going it for Jay, of course, a little ahead, I was like, well, if Kelsey goes, then I got to get Kittle soon after. And looking at the board, I knew that Jimmy was on auto. I'm like, well, he's not going to be at the top of the board. So again, playing the league more than playing anything else. And then with spread already having Pitts, I'm like, I doubt they go 2 tight ends because that build is very uncommon in Dynasty. There is some logic to it, maybe saying, well, if I draft 2 of them, I can trade one. But I personally don't like drafting with the mindset to specifically trade players. I don't mind if it falls to something where if Kittle's there in the 6th, like, okay, fine. But like, I'm not gonna use an early round pick like that and then hopefully find value in someone else. If he drops that far, nobody wanted him. So you're kind of buying into a low value sort of person anyway. your league may not value him like you do. So why buy into that, But I think Kittle, Chubb, Diggs, and Hill is a solid start in a dynasty. I'm very happy with that. I've got a little bit of youth, got a little bit of speed, a lot of speed, a lot of talent, and I'm very happy with that in year one and beyond.
Absolutely. I mean, two top 10 wide receivers, some might argue higher, a top 10 running back, at least in that range, a top 5 tight end locked and loaded. I would say that's a pretty decent start if you ask me.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see how the rest of this goes. There's a whole bunch of quarterbacks I like, and in 1QB, the funny part about it is you can really wait. And I'm not even kidding. I probably have 15 or 16 quarterbacks I'm fine starting in a 1QB league because I mean, even after you get outside the top 12, there are still players that have high upside weeks. And
it's like Kirk Cousins, Derek Carr.
Exactly. Like some of those guys in the middling rounds, like Jalen Hurts even used to be there. He's kind of rising up now with AJ Brown, but it's like there's a whole lot of these guys in that middle, and even Trey Lance is kind of like 10 to 12 range now, where like he's got some potential value. So like there's some different ways you can kind of build through the QB, and if you only start one. I mean, I'm fine seeing Allen and Herbert go off the board in the first 3 rounds. Thank you. You know what I mean? Like just
value
push more value down
for
to
you,
me.
Right? Yeah, exactly. And we did have Swamp Nola come in and say, "Who dat? What's up, Swamp?" He's at work and he cries. We cry for you, Swamp. And it said, "Sleeper won't notify me." He was in my queue. He's talking about Michael Pittman. Please, Josh, don't judge me for auto picking Pittman with that pick. Now, having said that, is it a reach a bit? Yes, there are a few other wide receivers that went after him that I would take over Pittman, but there aren't many, man. So like I'm high on Pittman. I don't blame you really when it comes down to it. I would take T. Higgins, DK Metcalf, DJ Moore, Deontay Johnson probably, but like that's kind of where the list ends.
Well, and you can even see the tier break in the draft, right? There's a whole bunch of running backs and other, like there was a very clear draft break, and Scamper's going with his 4th receiver. I like this. This is a kind of a ballsy build. I'm a fan. So this is when it's like, again, well, yeah, this is exactly what I'm saying. You're taking the value that comes to you. You're drafting based on value, not based on roster. I don't hate this at all. I think there's some definite value that you're adding to your team there. Kupp, Waddle, Johnson, and McLaurin, all pretty young, pretty good 3-year at least receivers. I'm not worried about that at all. So I think that's a solid start. He could be tricky to win year one if you're going to be lower at the tight end and running back positions. But again, we've seen crazier things happen where somebody blows up on your bench and you end up being a stud team. So not a bad deal.
Ooh-wee, Rick. Ooh-wee. Taking Garrett Wilson, Darren Waller at the turn. Love the Garrett Wilson pick. You just add to that young receiving group that you're already kind of building there. And then Darren Waller, again, TJ Hawkinson and Darren Waller, I have trouble deciding between. I think in Dynasty, I do lean each other. I don't want to talk about them right now, but they're close.
Yeah, I feel like Waller is still closer to those top 4 than a lot of people are thinking. I believe Adams opens it up a lot for Waller. Waller has been the best talent there for the past 2 years. Obviously we were hoping Ruggs would open the field up a little bit for that passing game. Obviously that turned tragedy. But I think that Waller is going to have, he's probably going to lose some targets, but I think he's going to have higher value targets than he had before. I think the touchdown upside is going to be better. And I think him and Adams are just going to dominate together. They're just both freak athletes, and I like it a lot. And Garrett Wilson was my number 1 rookie. So if Breece Hall is going to go in the first round and I can get Wilson in the 4th, I'm extremely happy.
Yeah. I think Garrett Wilson's like, I've said this, it's just like the safest like pick, it feels like to me out of all the rookies. It just feels like he's just a safe option. I know he's really good. So how about this conversation? I think Elijah Moore and Garrett Wilson are going to go neck and neck in dynasty leagues. You're just going to see them go close together. So obviously, Rick, you prefer Garrett Wilson here. I have trouble deciding between the two. I lean Garrett Wilson because the draft capital's there. I know he's very talented, but Elijah Moore proved it on the field last year, and I know he's really good. So, Rick, real fast, do you think Elijah Moore can thrive? Are you lower on Elijah Moore with Garrett Wilson in this offense?
I honestly think that this Jets offense is going to turn out to be pretty good. It may not be in 2022. We may need a redo on a rookie season for Zach Wilson after last year and how just putrid that entire offense was. The wide receivers weren't healthy. I think Corey Davis is a good 3rd receiver for them guys to kind of learn from. I think that offense is going to end up being really good just might be 2023 before we really see that come to fruition. So I like both Wilson and Moore, and we'll see if that if Zach Wilson pans out. Both those guys I think can thrive.
Oh yeah, it really does come down to Zach Wilson a little bit here, right?
It's real similar
Zach
to
Wilson's
Cincinnati,
right? Quarterback.
Yep. I was just going to say that Cincinnati sort of a thing.
Go.
Yep.
There we go.
Well, and also
you like both, Andrew?
I do, yeah. And let's be clear too. If both Wilson and Moore are going to succeed, then by default, isn't Zach Wilson going to be good? You know what I mean? Like I don't get how if they're both good, he's not good. I don't understand how that works. So yeah, I'm pretty much right there with you. I do think
throw in Breece Hall too, you know.
Yeah,
as a Chicago fan,
yeah.
As a Chicago fan, I seen Jay Cutler not be very good, but Alshon Jeffrey and Brandon Marshall both.
There we go. That's a good point.
Top 8 wide receivers. So.
I'm just saying it's more likely. It's more likely that they're all going to be good than none of them are going to be good, right? Yep. And we all saw Wilson struggle last year, but that was with Michael Carter, who is not Breece Hall. I think Breece Hall is significantly better. I think Michael Carter will still get the ball. I think he's still going to have a role in that offense. I think they added CJ Uzomah too, which is a pretty big pick for tight end. I think he's a good locker room presence. He's going to be a solid option for Zach Wilson in scramble opportunities. They really didn't have that last year. So I think there's a lot of chances for Zach Wilson to succeed. So I like the way you put that with like a reset rookie year. That being said, if Zach Wilson sucks this year, see ya. You know what I mean? Like you have all the chances, no excuses. And if you fail, it is fully on you at this point. Cause like you've got all the tools. It's got to happen. Yeah. And it might even not even take all season. Like you could probably tell by week 4 or 5 if this is going to work or not. And that's an interesting twist, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Just so you know, Mr. Scampers back in the third was debating whether to take his third receiver or Chubb. So you kind of, he was kind of high on him as well. Jay Wall's personally low on Pittman himself. And then Big Ben has something to say about our conversation right here. I will say that older quarterbacks that their arms shot, they tend to still support wide receivers when it comes down to it. You know what I'm saying? Like, yeah, Big Ben didn't have it anymore. He couldn't like push it down the field, but he could still throw an accurate short ball, and he was smart, you know?
He was still a valid QB2 in Superflex. Like everybody wants to hate on him, but he was still putting up 15 to 20 points in some weeks. You're like, that's all you need on a Superflex. Like, I'm not going to get crazy there. And in 1QB, he might not have even been started, but he's still not terrible. You know what I mean? Like he's still got some value. So yeah, I thought that was interesting.
So Andrew, I see you went with Treylon Burks and AJ Dillon with your last 2 picks. You kind of built like a really strong core to compete, and then you got some young guys mixed in here. How are you feeling about those picks?
Yeah, that was kind of my logic too. Well, Rick made his. I'll talk about mine. So Burks was my number 2 in this class, but I mean, again, it kind of fluctuates depending on the day because there's so many different ways to evaluate players.
The number what in this class?
The number 2 behind Breece. Like out of the whole class, I really and 1QB. I really like Treylon, and even honestly Superflex. Yeah, but like I really like Treylon Burks. I think that the way that the team traded away AJ Brown and then took Treylon Burks, they feel like that's a direct replacement. I feel like Tannehill's got at least a couple more years. Sure, they drafted Willis. Even if that does transition, I'm fine with it. And I just think his talent level is through the roof. And then taking Dillon is again, I just think there's such a big tier break there. And I look at that like I think Dillon does take over that role next year. So again, I'm kind of buying a little bit of the future with these 2 picks. And that's sort of how I like to draft anyway, is kind of draft for balance. And I've written about this for Fantasy Pros a couple different times, but it's like it kind of seeing how the draft comes to you. And my draft for the first 4 picks was not older, but more like win now, more competitive now. So it's like, well, let's balance that out. Let's get a little bit of youth to kind of fill back in here. I don't like being too heavy one way or the other. I don't like forcing myself into a rebuild after a dynasty startup draft. That's just annoying. So I'd much rather be contending and then get some younger picks so that I can take some players on. And I think the value of AJ Dillon's only going up. So I just felt like I like him more than Mitchell. I like him more than Zeke at this point. I like him more than Clyde. I mean, so there's a lot of those players in that same tier. And I just felt like the gap was too big. I had to try it.
AJ Dillon is a backup running back this year. You know, he's backing up Aaron Jones. He's going to get plenty of carries. Don't get me wrong, but he just has to be good. You know what I'm saying? Yep. Like he just has to be good for his value to rise because like Aaron Jones is going to be 28 next year. Running backs at the 28-year age. Oh man, that makes me nervous. So regardless, as if AJ Dillon is just good, people are going to be high on him because they'll be like, oh man, just wait until he's the start. I'm not saying he's Tevin Coleman, but I'm just using him as an example here. He was very hyped. He had a really good year as a backup and people were just waiting for him to be the starter, just waiting for years. Yep. And when it happened, it didn't really come to fruition, but his value just kept rising, you know? So,
I think he's got a lot left in the tank too. Well, I'm just saying he's got a lot left in the tank. I don't think his value is at its peak. And that's, if I'm taking a running back, if I'm taking a chance on a running back, at least I want him to retain or grow in value. And I think Dillon is probably one of the 5 that I can almost guarantee that happens. options. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's just really hard to see on a running back in most situations. So I'm happy.
And the Packers don't have wide receiver weapons. Like, they need to run the ball. They're going to need to get AJ Dillon involved.
Maybe they sign Julio. Maybe they go get somebody else. I don't know. But like, as of
Terry
today,
McLaurin
they do not.
is a popular
we'll see,
trade candidate right now. You know, a lot of people talking about that. But let's talk about Darnell Mooney.
Yeah,
I think that's a really good value on Mooney. How do you feel about that?
He is going
40th wide receiver, you know, off the board here.
Peppered with targets from Justin Fields. There's not a lot after him in the wide receiver group right now in Chicago. I do think that going into next year, there's going to be a big splash move there for the Bears. They're going to have to. They're going to have a lot of cap space. There is the off chance that they do make a trade for, you know, a DK Metcalf if Seattle ends up moving him. But either way, Mooney runs all the routes. He can beat you on slants. He can beat you on go routes. And so right now, he is the guy in the pass game that is going to get peppered. And he's good. And I think Justin Fields is going to be a lot better. Obviously, I am a fan. You can see the pictures behind me on the wall. But I do think that there is a lot of room for improvement with Justin Fields and Mooney. And they're doing everything they can to improve on that, working in the offseason. Them two and Kmet just together all summer, working to improve that stuff. So I'm just happy to have Nagy gone. And I think that there's nowhere to go but up from here for Fields. So that means there's a lot of room for Mooney to grow as well.
Well, I'll jump in here and just say I took Burks with my receiver there, and I wanted to kind of I didn't want to go double receiver at that pick there, but Mooney was on my list of like possible options because I just think he's going later than I think he should, and I don't mind reaching to get him because I think he's one of those guys that we can see grow and become a really solid option. But that whole Chicago offense just worries me a little bit. There is a lot of chaos potentially coming in the future if Fields doesn't perform. They have to go back to the draft again, and it could reset Mooney a little bit. And so, again, if I had the option, I think I'd go with Burks, who I think has a little bit longer leash and potentially more future. But I don't mind Mooney at all. I think Mooney is terrific at what he does. And I think that this year is going to be a good year for him with Robinson kind of out of the way. That offense is going to flow through him. So it should be good.
Yeah, I'm with you. And Robinson wasn't doing much last year when it comes down to it, but again, they really still didn't fill that position, you know. With Robinson. And then Clyde Edwards-Helaire, I just see that Jesse here in the chat said thoughts on CEH. Rick, you picked him. I know you're up in a couple picks, but I think that's good value for him. I mean, this is where you're going to see him go in most drafts, kind of in this range with the running backs you're seeing around him, and the upside is immense, right, Rick?
And that's what it really comes down to. I was never big on CEH when he came out and he jumped from, you know, rookie pick 910 to 101 overall and top 12 in startups after being drafted by KC. I was completely off of him. I wanted nothing to do with CEH at that value. In the seventh round, a lot different with Tyreek Hill leaving, a lot of targets leaving. We don't know who's going to pick up the slack for Tyreek Hill now. There's a lot of unknowns with Sky Moore. Hardman has never done what, you know, people had hoped he would do. Part of it could be
Marcus Scantling, Juju Smith-Schuster. No one you really know there, right?
Yeah. Right. And Darrell Williams was one of those four that was top 20 in yards after the catch last year out of that backfield. So if all that together puts Edwards and gives him more opportunity in the passing game, which is what everybody thought he was going to do coming out, then I do think there's room for his value to grow in that Kansas City offense.
Yeah, and I'll pivot back on something you said while you make your pick. I think I was out on Edwards at his cost as well. Like when his value went up, I was like, nope, and I had 0 shares, right? And then last year during the season and in the offseason, I acquired 3 or 4 shares because everybody was just kind of fading and done with it. And I was like, well, I'll take him if the cost went down. It's always about the cost, right? And I think he's on a talented offense. And obviously there is still some value in being on, you know, Pat Mahomes' team. But when they lost Hill and they didn't really replace Hill with anybody similar, I mean, you could say Juju, but I don't think that's similar. I think that they're going to have to rely on the running back a little more. Now, the team did just sign Jerick McKinnon. I don't think that changes my opinion of Clyde Edwards-Helaire at all. But it does change my opinion of Ronald Jones, right? Everybody was saying he might be the dark horse back up there. And then Isaiah Pacheco is someone I've been grabbing late in rookie drafts that maybe makes him more of a, you know, not cut candidate, but like a practice squad player. Just makes the bar a little higher for him to get on the field. So I think that Clyde Edwards-Helaire should have that role as a solid RB on that team and the RB1 for that team. And I don't mind him at all as an RB2 or 3 even on my team if I can get him in the 7th, 8th round. You're exactly right. That's probably right where I would have gone for him.
I mean, when it comes down to it, even if he doesn't get 200 rushing attempts, which, that's maybe not a possibility, Ronald Jones is there. But Ronald Jones, he's never been a good pass catcher, right? He's kind of known for his stone hands, right? So Darrell Williams, in terms of receptions at the running back position last year, was extreme. In terms of yards, he was 5th out of all running backs in terms of receiving yards, and he was 9th in terms of receptions. Those receptions have to go somewhere, and the Chiefs kind of, people started figuring them out a little bit, right? They figured they could kind of cover deep, so they were going to more of a short passing game. And I think that's going to be more or less the same thing that they do this year. So I think Clyde Edwards-Helaire is going to get a lot of catches this season. And he was kind of known as being a really good receiving back coming into the NFL, and that hasn't really came to fruition yet. But I think it's a good value pick, just like Mr. Scamper's saying right there.
For sure. This has been a quick draft. I like it. It's really flowing.
It's really flying. It's going faster than most of our drafts go, to be honest with you. But real fast, I just want to point this out, guys. Andrew, no offense to Twin, no offense to Jimmy John. They took quarterbacks in the 2nd and 3rd round. Guys I love. They are my top 2 dynasty quarterbacks, but they are in a tier with Patrick Mahomes, who was taken in the 4th round. And then while the tier separates after that, it's a close another tier with Lamar Jackson, Joe Burrow, Kyler Murray. And you got Kyler Murray at the end of the 7th round. I love that value.
I couldn't hit accept on that fast enough. Like, give me Kyler every day, and then the 7th, I figured he'd be long gone. I was kind of willing to wait and kind of see what had to happen on that. But I just feel like with Kyler, he's still going to be dinking and dunking. Hopkins leaving or being suspended, it doesn't really have much of a bearing on that. And I just think that's a stud QB, and that you don't see that a lot in 1QB, even in the 7th round of a dynasty startup. So I'm very happy with that.
Completely agree. Also, Lamar Jackson there at 704. Both excellent values on both those guys. I would be thrilled to get those guys in the 7th round. And then you came back around the turn with Allen Robinson, just adding more wide receiver depth. I think he's going to be pretty good with the Rams. I'm assuming you agree.
Yeah, and I think he's a solid wide receiver 3 option for my team, and he's my 4th receiver. So like I'm 4th receiver as a wide receiver 3 startable option. If Burks takes a little while to get up to speed, or needs some time to kind of figure things out, I think Robinson's a perfect win now piece to kind of fill that gap until Burks becomes a stud. But I think again, it adds to some of that balance, which again, I'm just a huge fan of getting that wherever I can. So again, I feel like I'm maybe going to crush Rick's soul here a little bit, but I like reaching for Cole Kmet here. I think this is one of those guys that he's got so much upside and he's got so much youth. He could be in that top tier tight end group next season. I'm not even afraid to say it. And I think too, with the way my team is looking, I've got a lot of win now pieces. I don't mind reaching for some youth here. Like again, Penny is a perfect win now piece, right? Like he may not be there for that long and we don't know what we're getting with him, but as my RB3, I really don't care. I just want to get somebody who can throw in there. And Carson is almost definitely toast and not coming back. But again, I think Penny and Kmet is an interesting duo here. I usually don't do this, and I'll be honest, in Dynasty, like Penny's somebody I'm almost always avoiding, but I just think he's got the chance more than I thought he did. And then Kmet, again, I just think he's a beast, and that offense is going to flow through him. And I don't mind having a backup tight end. If somebody does come to me and is looking for a stud tight end and theirs gets hurt, it gives you some options, but I can start him in my flex. So I'm fine with that too.
Your last 4 picks have crushed my soul because a year ago, Kyler Murray was in talks as the QB1 overall in Dynasty. And now you're getting him, in the 7th round, 5 rounds after other guys go. Allen Robinson, I think, belongs up in the range with Mike Williams and Brandon Cooks. I think he is just going to get – I think Matthew Stafford's going to love him. Great contested ball receiver that can run every route and win on any level. And last year, maybe I'm a conspiracy theorist, but Nagy did not talk to Allen Robinson for 5 months leading up to the season last year.
Which is bonkers. Like, who does that to your number 1 receiver? Yeah.
It's
weird.
crazy.
So what are you saying, Rick? So you're saying he just kind of phoned it in during the season?
There was some sabotage. Obviously Robinson had some injuries later in the season, but when you just look at that target share dropping from, I believe it was 151 the 2 seasons before to 63 or whatever it was last year. Like, it makes zero sense. I'm so happy Nagy's out. Rashad Penny was by far the most efficient running back in the league last year. That had over
it's actually crazy efficient.
He's so far ahead of everybody.
It was ridiculous.
So there's the potential if he stays healthy that there's just huge upside with him in the 9th round and him getting an opportunity somewhere else if Kenneth Walker, ends up being really, really good and Penny will have an opportunity to go somewhere else and get work. And then I agree with you 100% on Kmet. I think right now it's Mooney and Kmet in that offense. And I really honestly think the Bears' plan, especially this year with the lack of talent at receiver, is to run an offense similar to Baltimore. Run the ball a lot, run a lot of RPOs, something Nagy did not do with Fields. Nagy did not move Fields around at all.
Which was messed up, by the way. So messed up that he wasn't used in any creative running plays. Ridiculous, but I digress.
It is amazing how bad Nagy utilized him last year. And that's what we've seen in that offense for the past few years. Even Mitch Trubisky, as much as we laugh at Mitch Trubisky, he didn't utilize Mitch Trubisky to his strengths either. He just tries to fit square pegs into round holes, and that's why he's no longer a head coach in the NFL. But yeah, so those 4 picks that you made there, I love all of them. And I think there's a lot of upside with Penny and Kmet, and I think you get solid win now production from Murray and Robinson. It's just a perfect combination, in my opinion.
Well, I appreciate that because you crushed me with your first pick. I was really hoping Chase was going to make it to be a 10. No, of course not. But no, I just because I don't think we really talked about it either. But I really liked your last 4 picks leading up to these you're making right now.
Kadarius Toney,
Kadarius Toney and Lockett are both guys I'm targeting in this 9-10 range. So I thought that was pretty slick too. I think Tony's one of those guys that broke out, quote unquote, last year and could see a big uptick. And Lockett is getting slept on. I think that offense is still going to be Lockett and Metcalf, whether it's Drew Lock, Baker Mayfield, or whoever. Like at this point, we're not 100%. Honestly, we're not sure who the quarterback is in Seattle as much as we think we know. We don't. But I still think Lockett's going to get his. So I don't mind that pick at all. Even like as an aging wide receiver, I think it's fine.
Yeah, in Dynasty, I'm a little bit lower in Lockett. I'll just be honest. Just
as you should be. That's why he's going in the 9th. Yeah,
the 9th round, though, right? The 9th round for
there you go.
Wide receiver that somebody's done. And then you pair him with not pair him. I'm sorry, guys. But you do got Russell Wilson, who's actually another one of those quarterback steals, in my opinion.
Yep. I like that in the 11th round. That's a good turn there for you.
Yeah, I mean, I love waiting for Fields, but with Wilson falling this far with some of the other guys, there's no chance in hell that I'm taking Deshaun Watson at this point ahead of Russell Wilson, ahead of, even looking Matthew Stafford, Rodgers, Lawrence, Fields, Carr.
The fact that those guys are still not even touched yet just goes to the point we were making earlier.
Mm-hmm.
You can wait on your quarterback and still come out with a really good one in any one quarterback league, including Dynasty, but especially redraft, guys, especially redraft.
I did consider Algier in this range because I think he reminds me kind of AJ Dillon when he came into the league. People liked him, but they weren't real high on him. But there's a big opportunity there in Atlanta for a running back to come out and really surprise. I don't know that Patterson's going to take 20 carries a game. Somebody else is going to have to jump in there. And I think Algier could really, so I like that pick by Swamp. I considered him, but Mechie was a guy that I believe would have been, or could have been one of the top 3 or 4 receivers taken in this draft if he was healthy. In the 10th round, I think there's a lot of upside there. Lockett is he's going to get peppered with targets, and he does have he does disappear some, but he's also capable of 40-point games. And as my 5th or 6th wide receiver, if I can get those out of him and get around 10 points the other games, then I'll take that at that point. And then Toney he's electric when he gets the ball in his hands. If I don't know, the above the shoulders, kind of not knowing what's going on kind of worries me. The fact that the Giants were rumored to thinking about trading him already didn't make a whole lot of sense. I feel like there's raw talent there. It's just, can this kid put it together? If so, I think he's, a few rounds higher this time next year, but there are a lot of question marks, but I'm swinging for the fence there in the 8th round.
If he puts it all together, I think he could be as early as a 3rd-round pick next year. I mean, if he truly puts it all together, which is going to be tough with the Giants' quarterback situation, their offensive line. But I think he's the most talented wide receiver on the Giants right now. So if he's on the field healthy, and I understand there are certainly off the field concerns, and that's why he's back end of the 8th round. But his talent and what he proved last year when he was on the field was more than enough to make this an awesome pick for me. I think he's going to break out this year, truly break out. I know I think that he kind of broke out.
Yeah, he kind of broke. He had like 2 or 3 really good games and his value spiked, and then it kind of dropped again. But I agree with you. I think he is probably the most talented wide receiver on that offense, which doesn't say much about that offense if you're putting it that way. And Galladay is a shell of his former self, and Wandale Robinson, or Wandale, of course, but Wandale Robinson is coming in. Like I think he's got a potential to be a really good producer. And Sterling Shepard is still on the team. I mean, like there's a lot of those like middling receivers that are still kind of hanging out for fantasy that could be good. And I think Tony is the tier of his own behind, above all of them at this point. So I don't mind that pick at all. I think that there's a lot of upside left there.
Completely agree.
I love your last pick. I actually just wrote him up last week. I wrote up 7 undervalued wide receivers in Dynasty, and Tyler Boyd was, I think he was number 4 on my list. Even with those, 6 in a row there, buddy.
That's right.
But Boyd,
we'd be good trade partners. Let's put it that way.
I would love to see you guys draft next to each other.
Right, that could have been really hard. It would have been way more frustrating. The fact that I would have had to wait 8 more picks or whatever. But yeah, Boyd. If you take out, like, he had that rough stretch from like week 6 to 9 or 10, they hit their bye, and then he averaged 13 fantasy points a game. He had some 17, 18, 20 point games in there. He's still a big part of that offense. And I don't think people realize that with the way that offense works, all 3 of those wide receivers can be startable wide receivers in fantasy, especially if you're starting 2 flex spots. He's a safe player. I can't remember the exact numbers. It's in my article, but I think 30 out of his last 46 games, he's scored at least 10 fantasy points. That
sounds about right. Yeah.
And it was even his percentage was even higher with Burrow at quarterback. Even though obviously Burrow missed a good portion of his rookie year, but Tyler Boyd is definitely undervalued right now. Khalil Herbert.
I was just real quick about Boyd before I know you want to talk about Herbert, but Boyd is one of those guys too. Like I always say, like at cost, give me Boyd all day, right? Mm-hmm. Like you've got Chase in the first as 101. You've got Higgins here at 211, like a late 2nd, early 3rd in almost every draft. And then Boyd at the 11th round. Yes, it's a dynasty. And yes, Boyd is a little bit older, but he is also a team captain. And this team does not tend to get rid of players like that. We saw it happen with AJ Green. We saw it happen with Ocho Cinco. Like they hold on to these kind of guys that are their team guys. And again, as a Cincinnati fan, like I'm not hiding it. You know what I mean? Like I'm a Cincy fan through and through. And I think Boyd is one of those guys that, again, at cost is a steal in drafts. And it's someone I can get thrown in on trades. I love it. Like I started him so many weeks last year in the flex because it was just like, well, I mean, why not? Even if he only gets 12 points for a flex, that's outstanding. Like that's what I'm looking like. That's a solid production. I'd say his floor is higher than almost anyone at this range. And his ceiling might be lower, but even then, we're talking about wishful ceilings with Pierce and Bell and Gallup. Like we're trying to see like the most optimistic sunny day. Boyd can go 4 catches, 45 yards, and 4 touchdowns. You know what I mean? Like he's on an offense that is just going to ball out. So his ceiling is actually really high too. So
and not to mention the injury. If something happened to T. Higgins or Jamar Chase, Boyd is he's going to jump up and target.
One thing I put in my article is that he is one of the few wide receiver 3s on an NFL team, an NFL wide receiver 3, that immediately moves into wide receiver 2 conversation in fantasy, like high-end wide receiver 2 conversation with 1 injury ahead of him, which obviously we're not wishing for any injuries. We would love to see Chase. I do not want to see Chase lose any time or Higgins. But
Higgins missed some games last year. And Boyd was good when he did.
But we're talking about a guy that'll get 140, 150 targets if one of those guys misses extensive time. And you don't get that when you look at some of these other guys down here. You're not going to get that type of opportunity.
He's a quiet stud. He's a quiet stud. That's why I love him. But then, yes, Herbert, I had to take Herbert, not because you're a Bears fan, but just I took Kmet and I was like, you know what? Herbert's the next guy that I think is going to step up in running back land. I think he's a guy that I said before, like there are maybe 5 guys that I could see raising and growing in value as running backs. He's one of them. And I think at this range, I mean, somebody that you can snag with the 12th round dynasty startup pick. I mean, at this point, we're on our bench, right? This is fully in bench territory. And I have no problem at all adding someone to my bench that has so much upside to be a starter within a year or two, and potentially even this year, again, barring injury, if something were to happen to Montgomery, but he could outplay Montgomery too. It's entirely possible that Montgomery doesn't do that well, or, just kind of starts out slow and they lean on Herbert, who's got some electricity and blows it up. So I thought, again, that I went for kind of the high floor and then the lower floor, high ceiling with Herbert. But again, this is the kind of draft I like to do. Give me a little bit of everything.
Yep. Not to mention, David Montgomery's contract is up after the season.
Yep. And I've been pumping on our stuff to grab Khalil Herbert now before people catch on, because if Montgomery doesn't get the contract, there's a good shot that Herbert ends up being the lead running back going into next year. Montgomery has started to have some injury concerns. Last year, Herbert was more efficient at running back than Montgomery was, and Herbert actually had to face some of the toughest defenses. He had to face the Buccaneers, the Saints, I think, and I can't remember all of them, but I mean, he was the first running back to go over 100 on the Bucs in like a calendar year or something.
I mean, he played 4 games when Montgomery was out. He had at least 18 carries in every game.
Yep.
Good numbers.
Which obviously we have a different coaching regime, but like I said, I feel like we're going to get more of that Baltimore type running game and RPO style stuff with the new regime and with Justin Fields entrenched as the starter. That means even more opportunities, because they're going to be spelling these running backs similar to what we saw from J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards 2 years ago in Baltimore. I feel like Herbert is the Gus Edwards that might actually be better than the starter ahead of him. Like Gus Edwards isn't better than J.K. Dobbins, but was very efficient that year in that offense. And I believe that offense just helps for efficiency with all running backs. But Herbert, if Montgomery misses time, he showed it last year, obviously a small sample, but he's a high-end running back 2, back-end running back 1. And I think they're going to run the ball even more this year than they ran last year.
Yeah. And just to kind of wrap that up too, is he's my 4th running back out of 12 picks, right? Like I'm not leaning on running back in my startups, almost never. This is very indicative of how I tend to do startups anyway. I'd much rather, in theory anyway, hold on to people that are going to retain value and have struggle at the running back position year 1, and then draft a running back in the draft next year if I can get to that. Obviously not reaching and all of that. We were talking about CEH. I'm not going to go crazy, but I feel like you've got a much better chance to replenish your team from the rookie draft at running back than anywhere else. So again, it's just, I feel like there was some terrific values that I got here. These are all pretty good drafters. I mean, there were a couple of wonky picks, but I will be honest, that happens in every draft. So again, it's not like outside the box too far. But I also think this is a very solid group. I'm familiar with a lot of these people. Obviously, G-Men Jay, we're a fan of here. Jay Felicio. Yeah. We've got Jay Wall. I've drafted with him before. Mr. Scampers, I know I've seen in the chat before. So like, these are definitely guys that know what they're doing. These aren't just randos. But I will say it was a fun draft. It was good to knock some of that rust off and kind of see what I can get. This isn't a bad team. I don't mind this team. I don't mind the start.
I like your team. I like both of your guys' team. Yeah. I think you guys both drafted 2 of the best teams in the league. J-Wall, here in the chat saying his team is so young. And J-Wall, if we're just talking about like a young dynasty team, I love what he built. I mean, he got DeAndre Swift with the first pick. He went running back with 2 of his first 3 picks. I personally don't love doing that in dynasty, but look at what he grabbed.
He got some good value.
Position, right?
Can't fault him for that. Yep.
So, it may be a struggle to try to win year 1 with that kind of team, but you make some good trades. You build yourself up for next year. He's going to look really good. And then I look at G-Man Jay's team. You brought him up. That team is ready to win now. That's a really good team to win right away, and it's going to be competing with your team for the championship. I think year 1, Andrew.
I agree. Aaron Jones is going to be the linchpin of that team.
Your team's awesome too. You guys drafted some good teams.
I wanted to talk to Rick real quick because I noticed that you only took 2 running backs out of your first 12. Was that really because of value or just because you didn't see like there was anyone worth reaching for? Because when you're at the turn, you kind of have to reach sometimes. And I just wasn't sure what your thought process was there, if that's a normal thing for you or not.
So really my plan was after I took Mechie to take like 3 running backs in a row, but then Russell Wilson was still there and I don't want to pass up on him in the 11th. And then, I considered JD McKissick for, to add for a win now piece there where Fant is, but Fant is still a top 8 tight end
like
for
his
me.
Upside, man.
He's people are so worried about him moving to Seattle. He's got the same quarterback he had before. Like nothing's different for him. Yeah, he missed out on Russell Wilson, and that's sad. I would have loved to see them together, but really, we're dropping his value simply because of that move. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me, right? It's Drew Lock. They're familiar. It could be worse. I mean, I feel like it'd be worse if we were, if Geno Smith wins the job, right? We don't know how their connection's going to be. We know Drew Lock likes him, whether Drew Lock is good or not. He doesn't have to be good for Fant to succeed and get a bunch of targets in that offense. Plus, he's got DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett opening up the field for him, which we didn't see Sutton do to that extent like we would have hoped. We didn't see Jerry Jeudy do it yet to the extent that we would hope. So I felt like his value was just way too low, seeing a lot of these other guys go. Tanyan ahead of him. I can't do Ertz.
Taysom Hill. Yeah, I mean, like I would not take Taysom Hill ahead of him. Yeah.
And I got him in that
New Orleans Saints fan, so there's a little bit of that.
I get it. I get it.
I got him in that Komet, like Freiermuth. I got them 3 pretty close, but I still think Fant's got as much upside as all but maybe 4 tight ends in the league. It's just, can they make it happen?
Do you tend to stack like this? So you got Metcalf, Lockett, and Fant. I mean, like you're heavy on the Seattle offense. I didn't know if that was a plan, or is it just sort of like taking value and that's just how it
Metcalf
happens?
Gets traded, which there's some rumors out there. Woo!
Yeah.
That it's not my plan. And if I'm in an actual league and I'm drafting for, a competitive team, I might second think that, right? Plus I'm going to have my 8 hours on the clock. I'm going to be able to, look into it a little bit more, but we know we can trade. We know trading's fun. So I'm going to take the best player in my draft. I know I've got 2 or 3 months to get set up for that first week. I have to set a lineup. I'm not going to worry about that typically unless there's like players that are really close in value that I can pivot off of so that I don't have to worry about getting stuck with 3 guys on the same team. But really when we look at these, 11, 12th rounders, they're not killing your team if they don't pan out, right? They're not like those top 4 rounds where, you got to hit those on those guys because it sets you back if you don't. If Fant ends up not working out because Metcalf and Lockett are just dominating, then I've won at 2 other spots, right? But if one of those guys fails or gets moved, then that ups the chance that Fant succeeds. And if they do end up getting a quarterback, let's say Baker goes there and a healthy Baker actually performs well, then you don't need a whole lot from your tight end to be a good startable tight end. Now, if it was 3 receivers, then I would probably be really questioning myself, or 2 receivers and even a running back that I spent some serious capital on. I would probably be second guessing myself, but not with a tight end because
you're hitting on the value part there. That's actually why I was curious, because I don't think you didn't reach for Lockett. You didn't reach for Fant. They kind of fell to you there. I just wasn't sure if it was more of like just the value's too good to pass up. You know what I mean? Like might as well, like I'm not losing anybody. And you're in the 9th and the 12th pick. Like you nailed it. Like you're not wasting a lot if they don't pan out. But I just feel like that sometimes people look at this and say, especially with Dynasty, it's not as prevalent as it is in DFS and even redraft, the stacking. I just wasn't sure if that was something you wanted to comment on there.
Yeah, no, it would obviously look a lot better if Russell Wilson still had SEA next to his name there on my team as well. But it would be a very volatile Dynasty lineup if I had all 4 of those guys in there. But yeah, honestly, it wasn't, I didn't even notice until you said, I didn't even think about it. But, I wouldn't be taking Lockett in the 7th round or something.
For sure.
And then Fant and then the 9th and have 3 of my top 9 players or something. But I don't figure to be starting, even Lockett as my, 6th wide receiver. I don't even know how often he's going to be in my lineup.
Right. Well, and that's why I figured it wasn't intentional, but I thought I'd check in case it was.
Yeah.
Yep. Definitely. I think that's a good point for people to realize is that when you draft, especially this early. Now, if you're drafting the week before the season, then you can't do a lot of that same stuff because you don't have the amount of time to overturn your lineup and add more assets. But if I can get some of these guys later now and work trades and work that out so that my lineup's less volatile, because that's absolutely more volatile if you have Lockett and Metcalf in your lineup, especially with Drew Lock at quarterback. That could be just a disaster. But
you could wait until those videos come out, like to kind of kick back to the Friday show, right? Like adjusting my rankings based on preseason workout vids. You know what I mean? Yep. Like this is something where it's like if a blurb comes out and Lockett looks good, trade him. You know what I mean? Like, hey, now's the time. Yep. So you're hitting the nail on the head. It's June, right? We still got plenty of time to make some
wide receiver you drafted. He's your sixth wide receiver.
I totally agree. Taking him in the 7th is very different than getting him in the 9th, right? In the 9th, you're just taking the value. It's like, well, that's a dumb. Like, why would I take that? Like, why I can't pass that up? So totally different mindset. And I agree with you. I usually don't really look at that either if I'm drafting. I try to pay attention a little bit to upside, and that's where the positional differences happen, but not really for rosters. You know what I mean? Like if I only got 2 running backs, I'm fine with that. If that's just where the value went, I just like some of the running backs I was able to pick up where they landed.
Yeah. Unfortunately, you took at least 2 ahead of where I could get
I had a streak there.
Oh man, this was a lot of fun, guys. Jesse came in and said, I'm pretty mixed with old and young at 107. Jesse, I was just looking at your team while these guys were talking. I like your team. Now, there's some guys that I personally wouldn't go with. Like I said earlier, Dalvin Cook is a little bit too old for me to take there, but look, I expect him to be awesome next year. It's just, he's getting a little bit older. But I like your overall build. Love Rashad Bateman. Brandon Cooks is good value there. Dalton Schultz, Jalen Hurts, great value with Jalen Hurts. I like your team. Good job, Jesse. Great job.
I like Jalen Hurts there a lot in line with the other quarterbacks around. And I think he gets a lot of hate that he doesn't quite deserve.
Then you add AJ Brown. It's going to be fun. The Eagles going to be fun this year.
It's going to be a good year. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to it.
All right, guys. I think we're going to wrap it up here. I want to thank both of you guys so much. Andrew, Rick, you both drafted, I think, outstanding teams. And this was a lot of fun. A lot of great conversation here. You guys are the men. Just to let everyone know, we're live streaming every weekday at 3:00 Eastern time, just like we did today, every weekday. It was a lot of fun. We're going to get out of here. We'll see you tomorrow. Same time, same place. Trading makes fantasy fun, right? Hey.
Amen.
Have a great one.